Hey gang, I'm here to talk about the Harbor Freight Cement Mixer, model 61932. Now, there's a couple differences. There is a model 73536. Essentially, it's the same cement mixer. Apparently, they come out with a newer model, um, and there's some big differences. And Ghost did a wonderful YouTube video on how to assemble the 67536, and that's when I initially went in to purchase. When I went to get it, they charged me for it. They ended up giving me this box. I didn't see any difference, so I took it. So, but there were some big differences now after looking at his video and looking at what I got. Now, if you get the chance, I'm going to recommend that you do try to get the 61932 because there's some talk about the differences in the two units. The assembly isn't good at all. The instructions are horrible, and it really is going to come up with you making some common sense decisions on how this thing goes together, using the picture and looking at what they give you. So I'll talk a little bit about this. When I first opened it, the box, I noticed one big difference. I received two hardware packages. In the other video that Ghost did on the 673 or 67536, he received 8 or 9 different hardware packs that were individually packaged. I only received 2. In this bag, everything from here over was in, and this bag, everything from here over was in. So what I've done is lay everything out. I did a count on it, just so I can kind of correspond to the parts and the instructions. When they tell you the bolts to use, the bolts aren't identified. They don't correspond to anything in the installation instructions. And everything's metric, so it gets a little confusing on what bolt to use and what nut to use. So a little common sense, this thing will go together fine, but it's good to lay it out and kind of see what you get. So some of the differences, you are going to need a metric set. You're going to need a 3/8 drive and a 1/4 inch drive because you're not going to be able to get a wrench in a few spots. You're going to need a socket on either end to tighten up a few nuts and bolts. So just a heads up on that. So the differences I noticed after looking at Ghost's video on the installation that surprised me was the first thing. The motor, he ended up having to connect his wires at a later assembly process. There was a lot of talk about this box here getting damaged in shipping and the reviews. So I think what they did was they pre-assembled the wiring and they bolted the motor down with one bolt just for shipping purposes to the upper pan. Now the motor don't get mounted that way. You end up using this plate to mount it to later, but that's one big difference that I noticed between the two units. The other thing is, yes, the gasket that you use between the upper and lower bowls comes mangled. So they threw it in a box, it's all crimped up, and what I ended up doing last night when I opened this, I took that gasket out, took it downstairs, I put it in the dryer for about 10 minutes to warm it up, and then I put something over it to kind of form it back so it's a flat gasket. So that kind of helped me. The other talk during the assembly instructions is about using the gasket sealer. I agree with Ghost that I don't believe gasket sealer is helping you seal it. I think it's more to keep the gasket in place while you assemble the upper and lower drums. So what I've done too, I've noticed the big difference is that the lower bowl was pre-assembled for me. where I noticed Ghost, he had to assemble that whole unit. And there were a lot of questions about the holes, which holes to leave open for the blades, ones on the inside, where to mount them. So I think there was a lot of trouble with the assembly on that. So, but this lower bowl was pre-assembled for me. So all I had to do was apply the gasket to it, and I had 6 bolts that I attached the upper and lower bowl to, and then that's the way it is. So I did that this morning after I had formed the gasket. So I put the gasket sealer down, attached 6 bolts, put the 2 bowls together. I kind of jumped the gun on the installation, so, but I knew that that would be the way to go. I knew that's had to happen eventually either way, so I wanted to kind of get that out of the way. The other thing I'd recommend is getting yourself some neoprene gloves when you're applying the gasket sealer, not to get that all over you. So, so what I'm going to end up doing is going through the instructions and using some common sense with bolts here. A couple funny things is these 2 different bolts here. This bolt's a hair longer than the other, so it's very difficult to tell what a 60 and a 70 bolt is that's labeled in the parts list. So, but as you're going along, you can make some common sense judgments on which bolt, the longer one to use, the shorter one to use. So, but again, the only thing I've done so far is there were 7 of these, 6 washers, and 6 extra nuts. And I went ahead and assembled the bowl this morning. So that's the only thing I've done up to this point. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and just cut off here and put it together, and then come back and talk a little bit about the rest of the assembly. Ghost did a really good job on the basics of putting it together, so I'd recommend looking at his video